Welcome to Epilogue Podcast, the show where we discuss some stuff that happened on a different show ages ago which nobody really cares about anymore.
Hi, I'm Portponky.
And I'm LeBloc.
Today, we're discussing Farscape, Season 2, Episode 5, The Way We Weren't. Upsetting secrets are dug up from Aaron and Pilot's past. How did you feel about this episode?
This may be my favorite episode so far.
Of Season 2?
Of the show.
Of the show? It's definitely a good one.
I love this one, and that might be surprising because Chiana is barely in it.
Most of the characters are barely in it. But we get strong performances from Aaron and Pilot. Well, I say performance from Pilot's puppeteers, I guess. It's so easy to forget that Pilot's a puppet thing. Especially in some of the scenes in this episode.
I constantly forget it's a puppet with several hands, people taking care of it.
Well, we shouldn't discuss the magic too much. The magic of television. And just consider Pilot a character rather than picking into the fact that these are actors portraying characters all the time. It does from time to time, it does surprise me how easily they can leverage good character drama out of like puppets, animatronics, that sort of thing.
They sell it really well. And here they had to deal with weird new angles and bits of Pilot we haven't seen before.
We saw Pilot's butt.
And entrails? I don't know what those things were.
He had some sort of orifice from which sort of connector cables. Probably just regular
USB-C hookup.
Yeah. It's a crap load of micro USB charger cables. That was pretty gross. Well, it kind of gross. It felt like a nature documentary when he's pulling the tendrils out.
I'm glad it wasn't considered the natural way of bonding, because that would make no sense.
Because bonding a creature to a living spaceship makes sense if it happens naturally?
Yes.
How does that even happen naturally? How did they get to space?
The pilots?
Yeah.
They go to that home planet and scoop them up out of the water, the misty water, whatever. Was it water?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Leviathans don't land on planets. How would these creatures evolve? So I'm just playing devil's advocate.
They wouldn't evolve.
Fair enough. I liked a lot of things about this episode. Probably front and foremost, I liked the plot.
Why do you sound surprised?
Well, often in sci-fi shows, the plot, it can be good, but often the plot is usually a vehicle to explore some idea or social question or moral question.
That's fair.
Here, there was some of that. They were debating who the real bad guy was. But largely, I just thought it was a well-written plot that was kind of captivating, keeps you hooked from start to finish. I don't know.
It's a good story, plus it builds on the lore of the show, and it works in things that have been previously established. It's so well woven into the show.
Yeah, it's hard to think this was written now and not before all this stuff happened, because it ties a lot of things together so nicely. E.g. the contraceptive shield.
Yeah, that, and it was funny that Pilot was a bad pilot, but then now we know why, and it's really interesting that he wasn't ready. he shouldn't be a pilot, and that's why he's not exactly great at it.
It deepens Erin's character quite a lot because they have a tendency to make her not be a peacekeeper, to not address the fact that she was basically an oppressive military grunt for most of her life.
I have to admit, I forgot that was her background, so it was nice to have this shoved in my face as a reminder, and for Chiana to say, hey, what did you think she was doing when she was a peacekeeper? Because we're so used to the Aaron we have now, which is not that same person.
It reminded me a lot of how we talked about Dargo and his crime and how we didn't really care.
Yeah.
But this kind of works in reverse because now a sort of crime, I guess you could call it a crime, from Aaron's past is brought up. And then it's complicated because as a viewer, I'm willing to stand with Aaron and say, well, no, she's all right now. Come on. But the difference between this plot and the Dargo plot is this one I actually care about, even though it was entirely constructed in this episode, whereas Dargo's one was a multi-episode issue.
That's another great thing about this episode, that its plot ties into greater themes of the show, and that these characters now are not who we met when this show started. I mean, that's any show, but they had very different pasts.
It's not any show, though. Lots of shows have bad Flanderization issues. Characters just become a parody of themselves, and they don't change in meaningful ways. They just become entrenched in whatever they do. I mean, good shows know they will have forward development, and based on that criteria, I would rank this as a good show, or at least this episode as a good episode. There was a lot of Crace in this episode.
He was actually effective.
Yeah, he was better here than at any point in season 1.
Which makes you wonder what happened between this time period and season 1.
I think in season 1 they wanted him to be a military guy who was driven mad by the death of his brother, blind with rage or something, I don't know. Here they seem to have kind of retconned it so that he was just always mad and angry. Which works better. That's kind of what you expect from the peacekeepers. And they do fairly rough things, or that's what they say. You wouldn't really expect the people who strive to be high-ranking members of that group to be like really sane and reasonable people.
Now that you say that, I think it's weird how, what's that guy's name? Velarek?
Velarek, yeah.
It's weird how Velarek acts. Like, how is he a peacekeeper?
Because he's tech. Like Jelena.
Oh, okay.
He's a high-ranking tech. The techs seem to be more not sociopaths. What did you think of Velarek?
I thought he was fine. Kind of bland.
He is a bit bland. This show has some pretty memorable sort of one-and-done aliens. Velarek just seems like some random office dude.
Yeah, it was hard to understand how Aaron was drawn to this guy. He's not charismatic. He's not especially great looking. I mean, he's not horrible, for sure, but
What would you rate him out of 10?
I'm not doing that.
Okay. But
He
Aaron
just
maybe
seemed like
rated him
some
quite high.
dude.
Yeah, but I guess Aaron's surrounded by macho men all the time.
Oh, it was the novelty.
Hey, he's a soft touch.
What did you think of that rape fake out where you think that she was sexually abused and nope, turns out it was a sensual time.
It's bad memories from Crackers Don't Matter. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, you're like, oh no, please don't let it be this.
Yeah.
And it's not. So that's great. I'm very glad that it's not that.
I'm glad too. And I kept thinking, okay, how are they going to word this? Because they're not going to say rape.
The show likes to play with expectations. They really don't muck about with it.
That's a pretty risky fake out.
Yeah, it was only a couple seconds, I guess. Maybe it was deliberate. You're expecting something horrible, and then you're kind of relieved that it's not,
I was definitely relieved.
which maybe makes the passionate love scene kind of you're feeling you're feeling good when that happens. I don't know. Maybe that's a strange way of looking at it. Maybe they set your expectations one way, so when you feel elated that it's not that, you feel good about them being a couple, I guess. Even though Valeric is just some random dude.
Just because he didn't rape her, I'm not going to root for him.
That's a good reason to root for someone.
You should not do that, though. That's a low bar.
That's not okay. That's not what I meant. I don't. Zan continues to be strange.
And not very useful.
This is a very simple sort of moral question, but she freaks out about it and then runs off to pray.
For a few irons, by herself, doing nothing.
She seems strange. I think her brain has gone wrong.
John's brain has settled, sort of.
He seems more stable.
I noticed he uses their measurements more now. In this episode, he said chill out for a microt, whereas before, he would always say chill out for a minute or a second.
He's integrating with their society. That being said, he did say a bunch of weird stuff, probably. I can't recall, but he usually says a bunch of weird things. He said instant replay.
It was weird that he was surprised that Aaron has been with a man. Well, that's me reading into it. He didn't say that, but he seemed surprised.
Was he surprised? I didn't think he was surprised. Well, he's maybe surprised that she hooked up with some dude. Like, because you'd seen the guy on the recording.
He was amazed that she hooked up someone so bland.
He was probably surprised because he just didn't guess that. Well, there was a lot of stuff going on in the recording. She was very sad about it. He probably didn't immediately guess she was sad because she handed in the guy she was dating, who was the guy in the video.
If he had guessed that, that would be impressive.
Even you did not guess that.
You're right. I did not guess that.
I think John's cool with it.
Oh, yeah, he seemed fine.
Did you find this episode a little bit sad?
No.
Did you get the tears flowing?
No, I'm dead inside.
Okay. I found it a little sad.
Why? Pilot doesn't have to feel pain anymore. And he gets to naturally bond with Moya.
Sure, Dargo was all over that. It just made me think he'd be really into stuff like yogurt and
What?
health food. He sounded so pumped about natural bonding.
It's the warrior's way.
I don't know, I just got a really kind of hippie sort of vegan vibe off him. Maybe I'm reading way too much into this.
I didn't read any of this. I think it's exciting when your friend gets to bond with someone and they don't require torture to do it.
Sure, that's wonderful. I feel
Then-
great for Pilot.
He doesn't have to experience unyielding pain.
Again, that's fab. Dargo just seemed additionally pumped.
I really like when Pilot ripped out his connection. It was so surprising, and I didn't know how they were going to resolve that.
John's reaction was very good. He channeled a bit of the Shia LaBeouf Shia LaBeouf.
That's what you do when something horrible happens.
You become Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah,
That explains a
that's
lot about Shia LaBeouf.
that's our natural state. We regress to Shia LaBeoufness. We evolved that way.
He's like some baseline.
He is a pure form.
Can we just admit that this was a good episode and we don't really have much to talk about because everything we can say would be obvious?
That is true.
I do find it quite hard to podcast about episodes where there's generally nothing you can pick on to sort of pick the episode apart by. Something that's just generally good, all round good. I don't want to just sit here going, oh, this was good and that was good and the next one was good because, I mean, you've seen it, you know it's good.
I have. I love this episode, and scene to scene, there was something worth applauding. For one thing, I loved that Pilot has an ancient language that's too complicated for the microbes. That's so cool that that can happen. I just assumed everything can be translated, blah blah, blah, eases the problems of communication. But that was cool they threw that in there. They didn't need to.
He's talking to them all like they're simpletons.
Yeah, that's really funny too. Thinking, okay, how do I talk to a child in order to get my point across?
It's a very rich episode. We could go on about it. I'm happy to just say, yeah, it's good.
Okay, one more thing I want to point out.
On you go.
It's another tiny detail, but I love tiny details. So, to decide something between John and Dargo, they play rock, paper, scissors. And that's a neat callback. And it felt really natural. I mean, this episode is chock full of references. And as I said, it's woven in really well to the show. But that one works really well. That one works nicely because it was so fluid. Yeah, they need to make a choice really quickly. Let's do this. We've already seen that he taught it to him. This episode is so great.
Dargo, like, Dargo's astonished that he lost as well.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. It's always John and Dargo, because he only taught it to Dargo, so it's just those two that play rock, paper, scissors.
As far as we know, he could have conceivably taught everyone else, but I hope it's just Dargo.
We've only seen those two play it. It's their little bro thing. Almost like if someone else was playing rock, paper, scissors with Dargo, and John walked in, he'd be like, whoa, hey! Hey, you never told me. Do you have a quote from the show which you would like to share?
I just wanted so desperately to see the stars. I can relate.
Feels bad for Pilot. He kind of got tricked. They all think that they're the bad guy, but no one seems to notice that Veleric is really the bad guy.
Because he's so bland, you would think a villain would be more striking.
He wasn't particularly villainous. I mean, I guess the Peacekeeper hierarchy was the real villain. But he'd arranged the pilot's death. If he couldn't have sourced Pilot, then the other pilot would have remained, I guess.
He would have found someone, though.
Maybe. I mean, probably. But his whole line about, well, if you don't do it, someone else will, is just him twisting Pilot's mind to make him not feel the guilt, which he then later on does feel. That was a little bit villainous. Veleric was not that nice a guy.
He was telling the truth. I think
Sure.
he was being candid.
He wasn't that bad a guy either. I just think he should have taken part of the blame. Pilot and Aaron were lumping it all on their own shoulders. Then again, Veleric did have a really sort of progressive way of looking at what Aaron did.
Oh yeah, that was interesting. That he didn't immediately turn on her and say, "How could you?" Blah blah blah.
Maybe he did just see the good in people. Okay,
that's why she liked him.
Yeah, maybe he's a good guy after all. Also, when Erin says she wants to go back on Prowler duty, and Grace says, whatever. That was so funny. Like, he really doesn't care.
It was a good moment of, yeah, of course he reacted like that. Why would he care? Why would he have that in his mind? And why would he be pleased that, oh, I'm so glad that you're getting Prowler duty?
It's just so dismissive from a commander guy of a whole big spaceship thing. Grace is such a goof. Shall we ride out this high and go on to the next episode? See if it lives up to the standard set by this one?
I guess, but that's a high standard.
Well, it's a good show. Don't quote me on that, though.
It's a good show, Portponky 2017.
Oh, gosh, how could you? All right, let's go. Let's watch this next episode. Bye.
Bye.